Welcome everybody. How are you doing today? It's so very nice to have you here. And I wanted to speak a little more about our upcoming program, our 3-week program on freedom, surrender, trust, and no separation and embodiment of presence in today's world. And this program is both really for our returning students as well as for our new or newer students as well. There are many things I will be speaking about in this program. I already recorded one video about this more, the understanding of emptiness and love. And today I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the vulnerability of how to live with the vulnerability of what's going on in the world and yet remain in presence. And also what we keep coming back to in our programs, no separation and embodiment of presence. And that's so key that we actually have the actual experience of no separation. And that's why I care in my programs to not only speak about it, but to make sure that everybody can experience and know experientially there really is no separation. And once we know that, so often that is such a relief, that we know that. Because the mind, the mind describes the world for us. And the mind as an object that arises here, it always creates a duality. It's always dual, right? So the mind, when the mind is present, there's always here and there and me and you and this and that. And yet when we dive into our true nature, when we simply are at rest here, when we trust that also, because that's a big part of it, so often we might even know it or experience it, but we don't trust it fully. Once we trust it, we know everything is okay just the way it is. We also know there really is no separation, and we also understand, yes, the mind arises here. It describes the world for us. We don't have to rely on that description. We can trust what we really know is true. And so much is going on in the world, and that's why I always cycle back to, no separation and embodiment of presence in today's world. Because there is so much going on, and how can we remain really aware and in the vulnerability of what's happening, and at the same time to remain resting in presence? Because we don't want to deny, we don't want to reject, we don't want to create a false, separation. And, I agree, sometimes we need to, if the information about the world or what's going on in the world is too much, if we end up too stressed about it, too traumatized by it, we might need to create some limits or some boundaries on receiving of that information, but we don't want to separate ourselves from what is. And the current example of the war in Ukraine, which is still going on, and so many of you have spoken to me how it affects you. And I know myself, my family still lives in Poland, and I'm very keenly aware of that region, and I grew up in Poland, and I'm very aware of that situation. And so how can we, in situations like that, how can we really remain open in the vulnerability? Because it's only human that it affects us, right? It is going to affect you. There's no other way around that, right? But there's a difference between being affected and remaining in the vulnerability of it, and between being traumatized by it, or between losing, our ability to be at rest in presence, because so much arises for you that, or for us, that we get lost in that, arising, right? So how do we do that? How we need to allow ourselves to be touched by that, right? we need to allow ourselves to experience what is actually present for us. We can't shy from that. Because when you really allow it, when you let yourself be present here, when you notice what is actually present, that not only allows you to be aware of what arises, but that also is presence itself as well, right? So if you are hearing about situations in the world, if you are watching the news, if you are reading, if you are talking to people, and if you are feeling affected, take a moment, and we can take a moment right now together. Take a moment, sit here with your eyes open. Notice the sense of presence. Good, good, beautiful. And also notice what is actually present for you right now, because that's that embodiment part, right? Embodiment means we don't have to shy away from what is. We can simply, become aware, and become aware more on the level of sensation than on the level of emotion or thought, which can take us into a story, but become more aware on the level of sensation, what is actually present for you with everything or anything that is going on in your life or in the world. Can you just notice that? Can we just notice that? And as we create this, space for that, right? That ability to experience what is, then whatever is can move through more easily, right? And we can remain in that openness, We don't have to shut down. We don't have to shy away. We don't have to reject. And as you allow what is, as it moves through, as you rest, you come more to rest, then presence becomes so much more available. Take a moment and notice that. And that coming back to presence, that is helpful. That is helpful to you, to me, to everybody, to everything in the world. And of course, as I said before, if you feel drawn to actually take action, sometimes that's really helpful for the nervous system and brain to take action. By all means, if you feel like you need to get involved or engaged. So we are going to be speaking more about that embodiment piece, how to be present to whatever arises in your life, right? So we don't have to bypass it or reject it or try to make it any different. How can we remain here and yet present to what is happening in this moment? So if you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe and like us and share. This really helps us with our YouTube channel and making this more available for everybody. And I want to invite you all to join me in this upcoming program starting on April 3rd.